So carnivore just made everything so obvious and so easy for me, just on a level of satiety that I've never really experienced in my life before, and then made fasting so much easier to do. And I'd been like making myself fast before, just intermittent fasting, nothing, no kind of really long fasts, but everything just became really easy and straightforward with carnivore. And it completely got rid of any food preoccupation whatsoever.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so grateful for somebody like Mark Sisson and Brad Kearns and these guys who, they basically created the primal space. Lots of nuts and seeds, lots of the big ass salads you would eat every lunch.
Yeah.
Had one every single day. And they were willing to learn and change their opinion on things. I remember when the book, The Keto Reset Diet, came out, like, wow, these guys are talking about keto. Interesting. It was kind of like a newer thing and maybe like a little bit controversial at the time. And everybody was calling it a fad. I thought it was a wonderful book that they wrote. And then they started to get more into the carnivore world and they talked about that. And it was like, wow, like if Mark Sisson doesn't eat his big ass salad every day, maybe I don't need to eat a big ass salad either. And it's a story that we hear so consistently. I was not feeling great. I was addicted on sugar. I started to pay attention to diets. Somewhere on the spectrum, I was either paleo or vegan or vegetarian, got a little better, but I had other health issues. I found keto. That was better. I certainly went in the better direction, but it was only when I went carnivore that everything resolved. All the weird stuff, all the subtle things, all the things that you think back on that you'd forgotten about, like aches and pains and all kinds of crazy stuff gets better. How long have you been on a carnivore diet?
So it's over 3.5 years now. So it'll be 4 years kind of in the summer this year. So between 3 and 4.
Okay, so almost exactly the same amount of time that I've been on. I started my 30-day trial of the carnivore diet in April of 2019. Okay. I loved it, so I never stopped. And so you're about the same.
It was July 2019.
There you go.
I remember we'd gone on holiday, and I think we were in Spain at the time, and we were staying in a hotel that was just, it was great. So it was like buffet restaurant, and they had grilled meat every night. And I remember going up and it just messes with your head, I think, in the beginning, because you think, can I really not put any vegetables on my plate? And I remember I had a couple of mushrooms for a couple of days, like just measly mushrooms at the side of this plate of meat. And then I just ditched them, and it was on that holiday. So I always remember kind of what month it was I started carnivore. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Cool memories. What surprised you about your mental health after going carnivore?
Yeah, so I'm not somebody who's had kind of really any major mental health problems, but what I would say is I've probably been prone to a little bit of social anxiety. Like I'm an introvert by nature, more of an introvert than an extrovert, but I kind of that's just melted away and doesn't really cause me much of an issue, if at all, now. And I kind of care less about what other people think of me. That's something I was talking to someone about recently, but that's been a really nice perk to it. And the zero carb zen that people refer to, I didn't really have a mood difficulty before, but I get days where I just can't really describe the sense of optimism and excitement that I feel for whatever is going on in my life at the time. And that's a definite change. And of course, I don't suffer with anything like PMS anymore, like I used to. So I think that to get better over the years with low carb, it definitely has been problematic in the past. So there's definitely mood effects that I've noticed.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you describe it almost identical to the way that I describe it. Like now in hindsight, looking back, like, yeah, I dealt with things. It wasn't to the extent that I would have been diagnosed with anything, but the anxiety or stressful events in life, the little things that shouldn't bother you, they bother you. People cut you off in traffic. You get very upset. And like, all of that stuff just tends to kind of go away, where you don't really mind those kinds of things happening. You're more grateful and more present for your life. And that's a really great way to describe it. I love how you said just like this, for no reason, there's just like a wave of optimism. I get those all the time, and it's wonderful. Yeah. It's so different.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I think I had one this morning, and then I was just reflecting on it, like, oh, there it is again. Isn't this great? Yeah. So, I mean, if that can happen for people like us, I just, you just have to wonder what the potential is for people who have really struggled with mood and anxiety symptoms and any other sort of mental health symptom that can come. So yeah, I'm really excited, and particularly excited about carnivore, just in terms of the benefit and the potential for benefit of that for people's mental health, because it's a subset of keto. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a really interesting podcast by Dr. Paul Mason this week, and he was talking about, I think it was called "Is Your Cardiologist a Clot?" and in his usual kind of humorous way, but he was talking about atherosclerosis and the formation of cardiovascular disease, and talking about blood clotting in relation to that. And oh gosh, why did I bring this up? I think it's gone out of my head now. Oh, anyway, it's something that you have to watch. Oh yeah, that was the reason. So he eventually came on to plant sterols, and a theory that, well, not a theory, there's evidence that plant sterols can integrate into your red blood cell membranes and end up causing dysfunction potentially. And they found red blood cells within atherosclerotic plaques. And then there are certain crystal depositions you get within heart disease plaques that were always assumed to have been cholesterol. But what he was putting forward was that plant sterols are actually almost identical to cholesterol. And he was putting the theory out there that perhaps it's plant sterols that are responsible for these crystallized structures within atherosclerotic plaques. And that sort of stuff just makes me so excited, I can't explain. And so he was coming on to say he's not even all that sure about coconut oil now. So coconut oil is something that, with a ketogenic diet, we would sometimes recommend to people to boost their ketone levels because of the medium chain triglycerides. And I've had a couple of people contact me or ask, would I recommend that? And I've had to say possibly, so it can be a good way to boost your ketone levels. But actually, I was aware in animal studies that, coming back to the gut again, that there's evidence that coconut oil in animals can lead to lipopolysaccharide endotoxemia, so LPS from gram-negative bacteria in your gut leaking across the gut wall, and then contributing to inflammatory reactions elsewhere in the body, because there's these toxins from the bacteria that can get elsewhere in your body. And then somebody sent me a link to Judy Cho's podcast from a couple of years ago when she had an expert on talking. It was just a 4-minute clip, and that's what they were talking about. They were talking about their concerns about coconut oil in relation to LPS endotoxemia. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute. So sometimes when people have asked me, I've said, well, I'm just aware of this concern in animals. So I'm not entirely sure if coconut oil is absolutely ideal for humans. And then there was Paul Mason this week saying he's actually veered away from recommending it because it's very rich in plant sterols. And with all the other evidence he's gathered, he's not all that convinced that plant sterols are healthy.
You're blowing my mind. You're blowing my mind. Again, I've done carnivore for 4 years. We talk to experts all over the world, but I still consider some foods like safer and beneficial, and coconut oil would absolutely be one. MCT oil would absolutely be one. Avocados for some people might be one. Maybe some seasonal fruit some of the time. That's bonkers. I have not heard any of that, and that is absolutely fascinating. I cannot wait to listen to that episode.
Yeah, go and watch this episode. I mean, this is my most exciting thing that's happened to me this week. It's only midweek, aren't we? So yeah, I mean, it blew my mind. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to look into that more. So yeah, the more I do carnivore and the more that I find out, the more I start to think, maybe some of the experts out there who do seem a bit dogmatic about things, although I generally trust their opinion, but maybe they are actually right in terms of having some sort of caution over some of these plant foods, even if it is something like coconut oil that seemed seemingly unproblematic. I'm not so confident about that now. So
that is fascinating. Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, we've talked to people like Dr. Mary Newport, who helped her husband who had Alzheimer's by feeding him coconut oil, and there was some pretty clear benefit there. But yeah. It's like I get asked all the time about, is this plant food okay in my diet? Can I have this sometimes? Can I eat this? And it's like, there's always a question. There's always a question. Yeah. It's never like a direct yes or no. It's always like an, I don't know, maybe it might be okay for you. It might absolutely not be okay for you. All plants have toxins.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I'm at now with it as well. So I did have someone on social media recently asking me specifically about coconut oil, and that's partly why this reason came up. And And I started off by saying, I think it's probably okay, but I'm just aware of this particular issue to do with the gut. And now by the end of like mid this week, after seeing Paul Mason, I think I'm more saying I really don't know. And, there might be a useful role for boosting ketones in a particular person if you really need to target your ketone levels for any reason. But whether that's ideal longer term, I think we just don't know, do we?